Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Most Excellent Adventure
to Heavy Metal
History.
All right, so I am sitting here with Heri from the band Tyr. Thank you for doing this, man.
My pleasure, man.
So, to kind of get things rolling here, you know, the thing I like to start off with as far as like getting the conversation rolling, let's go all the way back to the beginning for you, like your beginning influences that kind of got you into heavy metal. You know, what were those first records you remember hearing or buying or seeking out that really drew you into it?
Well, I remember a cousin of mine showed me an Iron Maiden album called which one was it? It was Peace of Mind, and it really struck a chord with me. And around the same time, I'm not sure which came first. My big brother got the cassette for Motley Crue's Girls, 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 and that really excited me. Those are the first I remember, and shortly after, over a long time, I started listening to bands like Europe from Sweden and Def Leppard from the UK, and that's where it all took off. I must have been 15 at the time.
So you got a little bit of like early prog metal influences in there.
Yes. Progressive. Well, Iron Maiden was like a tiny bit progressive at times.
Mm-hmm.
Europe, well, not so much, but there were also bands like TNT from Norway, like progressive, and Judas Priest came very, very early too.
So with finding those bands, did some of that inspire you wanting to like start playing guitar, or was that mostly from friends or family members that wanted you to get into being a musician?
I had some friends, some classmates who played guitar, acoustic guitar, some of them, and so there were, guitars around for some time before I started playing. I was more interested in mythology and history, actually, from I was a year old around, and there was the compulsory flute classes in Paris public school from second grade. I think you had to play the recorder, it's called, not the actual flute, and so I knew how to read notes, and I had a basic understanding of how that worked. As soon as I became interested in heavy metal, I became interested in music in a very different way, and I guess it was my classmates and my big brother had an acoustic guitar, and that sort of got me interested in the whole thing, and bought a guitar at age 14.
Wow, so pretty young there when you started playing, huh?
Yeah. Well, it might have started earlier, but 14, it's about something about it. I guess it's last call.
Yeah. So when you decided to transition that to wanting to attend school for music, like what inspired you to want to do that?
Well, my first interest in music was, as soon as I got the guitar, was how was this put together? How do you make these songs?
Mm-hmm.
What's the logic behind it? How does the whole thing work? I really wanted, immediately try and take the whole thing apart and see the nuts and bolts of it, and so I became deeply interested in music theory, and when I was my early 20s, I went to school in Copenhagen. I was there for about 5 years, and I studied music theory and guitar, and that all happened in Copenhagen and in my 20s, and actually first I wanted to become a linguist and be an amateur musician, but the music just grew and grew around me, and I found I spent all my time on music, so I skipped planned linguistic studies and became a musician instead.
I mean, do you always find yourself like constantly learning still on guitar, even after all this time? Because I feel like that's the case with a lot of musicians. They're always still learning something new or a different style, or especially like with music theory, that's always something to unpack within that.
Oh yeah, I mean, music theory is a deep subject, and there's so many things you can. Of course, nothing. Sky's the limit. You can do whatever you like. There's no laws. You can put things together the way you want to. So you can keep exploring and learning, and there's so much material, so many approaches, and so many methods to explore that you're never going to get through it all. And as for technique, well, to be honest, I'm not a natural talent. I'm not a natural born talent. When it comes to the guitars or vocals, it's really hard work. So I sort of tend to rediscover things I learned 20 years ago because I just neglected it. And oh yeah, I used to do that, and then another year passes and I forgot something else, and just keeping the technical level all around to up to par, takes time. There's so many techniques to work on, so many different approaches, and if I sort of stop and think about what I'm doing, I can correct myself with things I learned 10 years ago I just forgot to apply.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not so much discovering new stuff for me, it's more keeping up with everything I learned over the years.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I feel too with like, especially a lot of guitar players, the importance of the fundamentals is always going to be like your base, and you can always revert to those, but it still helps you grow as a player as you get older or, learn more things, because those fundamentals are always going to show you ways to do the new things that you learn.
Yes. For every time you rediscover your fundamentals, they're a bit more, engraved upon your backbone, so to speak. So yeah, it's like the I'm not sure it's the right way of putting it, but like the floor rises a bit each time, and you're more and more certain of where you are. I guess maybe a little bit also, locked in your certain style, but that's okay, if you're comfortable with that and you don't necessarily need to reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
That's my.
I think that's one of the other really unique things about pretty much every guitar player. If you really listen to them over the years, using you guys as an example or yourself as an example, you can really start to see where you come into your own with your own playing style, whether it's like straight from the beginning or like over the course of time. You're always evolving and changing, and that's how I think a lot of bands really get that unique sound is with their guitar players, because you can sit there and listen to like a riff or a song and be like, oh, that's a Heri song, that's a Heri riff or whatever, and I think that speaks a lot to the instrument and the person playing it is equally.
And also the level of fame, because you would have to have heard quite a few of my songs to be able to make that distinction to begin with. If you'd never heard it before, you wouldn't have a clue, of course. So it also takes the fact that you have to have written a few songs and you have to have them released and play them live. So it's all those three songs combined, all those three things combined, I guess.
Yeah, I think inherently, when you're learning guitar in the beginning, you're just trying to like piece everything together from various influences, or you're always going to be like, how should I put this? You're always going to be at least mildly using songs or pieces of songs you've heard in the beginning, and then that's kind of how you branch out, so to speak, after that. Does that make sense?
Excuse me, I sort of spaced out here. I'm a bit tired. Can you repeat the question?
Oh, you're all good. Yeah, I understand, man. You've been doing this like all day, so I get it.
Yeah, you're now. Yeah, ask again, please.
So pretty much.
I'll concentrate.
You're all good. So with like early on in guitar playing or songwriting, it seems a lot of players like to use their influences to kind of create like this little box of what they know or how to write a song, and then from that you kind of create your own style out of that as well. And I think that speaks a lot to the guitar player and their influences kind of coalescing together.
I think that's absolutely right. If I think back on when I started to write music, you know, it was Black Sabbath, Iron Maiden, Metallica, Judas Priest,
Yeah.
and sort of putting it together in a way that I thought maybe they should have done. It sounds very conceited, but of course you can't copy them, or else you just make a cover band. But you have your own influences also, and mine came from Scandinavian Nordic folk music, and I had sort of this doomy idea about you know, very harmonic and dark folk music done in the style of Black Sabbath, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden, in that way, and maybe a little bit of the Scandinavian bands like Europe, TNT, and maybe a bit of Mötley Crüe also. But you know, it turned in time. You know, you take a few tricks from here, a few tricks from there, and it turns into something completely unique. And you sort of start to refine your own tricks instead of other people's tricks. So your style sort of evolves out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like one of my favorite things about guitar playing and just musicianship in general, is how it all kind of evolves from different perspectives and you get something new out of that.
Yeah.
So one thing I like to kind of do on this podcast, you know, because it's like heavy metal history related, if we could go back about 10 years now, one of your records, By the Light of the Northern Stars, celebrating a 10-year anniversary, which is pretty cool. Where was the band creatively around this time for, you know, this record and being 10 years ago now?
Well, you know, I was probably the deepest I've ever been into, you know, Faroese folk music, and it shows on that album. And we made some songs that have sort of definitely, you know, struck a chord with the audience, and there are some songs we play at almost every show, and it's probably the most coherent concept album we've made to date, save maybe Ragnarok, I'm not sure. Anyway, it's I was doing everything by myself. I wrote all the music, I arranged everything, and sort of I think the only guy I sort of worked together with at that time was the drummer Kari Steinmoy. And apart from that, you know, I was sitting in my own room just nerding around with the details until I was satisfied with it. And I had a lot of time on my hands back then. I had good circumstances, and it was a bit hectic still. I mean, we had to hurry up for a deadline, as we did for years. And but thinking back, well, towards the end of the studio session, I do remember we had quite a time crunch.
Really?
As we had for all albums until this one, but that didn't affect the creative process, only the recording process. The creative process, as I remember, was quite. I'm not sure I remember correctly. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, I understand.
But thinking about it, it was not the most hectic.
Well, I would have to think around this time too, you know, it being your fifth album, that there was probably a lot less pressure off of you to like have to worry about pleasing fans or changing your sound. It's just like you wanted to do what you wanted to do, and you made this album out of that.
Yeah, that could be. I remember with you know, we got the first contract with the Napalm Records on our album Eric the Red, and the first original album we did with Napalm was Ragnarok, and it's quite progressive and doesn't have any of those short and catchy songs as they liked when they signed us with Eric the Red. So, and then came this album By the Light of the Northern Star, and or did it? Was there an album between there? No.
Mhm.
Six, six, and 2000 and I have to look it up, man. I've forgotten.
Oh, it's okay. I have that problem myself when I'm like trying to remember, just my own information of like looking stuff up. It's so much stuff to remember.
Anyway, we did. We'd started touring together with bands that played music that was radically different from ours, from anything I'd heard before, and I think looking back, it did have an influence on our style and our songwriting and the way we thought about playing live. We didn't play much live for the first two albums. Only after we made the third album, we started playing live, like seriously, like hundreds of shows, or between 100 and 150 shows a year.
Wow.
And seeing your music or playing your own music live sort of reminds you that, or shows you much more clearly what works live. And I think, I see now we made the Land album between Ragnarok and By the Light of the Northern Star. So after Ragnarok came Land, and sort of went a bit sideways looking back. It's a good album, I guess, in some ways, but didn't go in the direction that I intended. Mm-hmm. And By the Light of the Northern Star, I think is marked by the fact that we were touring a lot, and we got some inspiration from other touring bands and from our own, just seeing our own songs effect on people live. And I may have written that album thinking, keeping in mind that they should be effective live.
So you're thinking more about the live show as opposed to just like what goes on a record now?
I think when you tour as much as we do, it's impossible not to, because that's where you see the songs the most. I mean, you work on them for a few months, then you record them, take a week at most, and but then you play them, for the rest of your life, as far as I can tell, and that's and it's impossible not to think about songs in that context once you start touring. So that happens if you want it or not, I think.
Well, I think the amazing thing to me too is like pretty much up until this record, your output for music was extremely short and very consistent. I mean, you would put something out almost every year and a half, almost, it seems like, for a while there. Were you just always that creative, like filled with music, or was that just how you knew how to write music, which is just get it and put it out?
Well, I'm very creative. I have music lying around already. I have, if I look in my file in my computer right now, I have about 10. I have one album called, a folder called the 9th album, and a folder called the 10th album even. And there are 9 songs in the folder for the 9th album.
Wow.
And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 songs in the folder for the 10th album. And then I have a project with my girlfriend I'm working on. We have about 12 songs ready. Well, they're not ready. We're working on them. Mm-hmm. And then there's my solo project, Heri and I, where I have 9 songs, some of them finished and some of them need some work. And I also have some completely unrelated projects that I have a dream of one day releasing a guitar album, only guitar, and I have also a dream of releasing an acoustic album with only me singing with acoustic guitar. And I have some songs in those folders too. And if I want to, I sit down and fiddle around on the guitar for a moment, and I have a song idea. It comes very easily to me. But that's not enough. You also have to have a working method to arrange the songs.
Yeah.
Write the lyrics, work on the songs until they're you feel they're ready to release. Because a very small part of it is the creative process, and a much larger part is knowing what you're doing. Having the theoretical insight or the practical insight into putting the songs together, and that has nothing to do with inspiration.
Yeah, because composition is such a key element to making a song be, for lack of a better word, good. and also to have it appeal to people who are going to listen to it. And I think most listeners don't really recognize how much work goes into not just writing the song, but putting the pieces together as well. A lot of times you hear bands that maybe had a song, but something was just kind of off, and then they come up with one guitar riff, and then bam, that song is just like perfect.
Yeah, sometimes you're lucky and you hit a riff that is easy to put together, to a song. Some practical things just work well, and it's not the intention of the guy who came up with it. It's just lucky. But if you know what you're doing, you can sort of shape your riffs and songs to work better. But it takes some time and it takes some insight, and I suppose that's what happens with some one-hit wonders.
That's a good point. Yeah,
they hit it lucky one time and they try to repeat it and it just doesn't work. And unless you have the insight into what it is you're doing, it's very hard to repeat it. And as for me, I'm deeply interested in music theory and how to put it together, and I like to analyze how other people put music together. Mm-hmm. So I find it relatively easy to do this. It's just a question of finding the time and circumstance.
Well, I like that you have such this incredible work ethic with the music. It's something that you're passionate about and you're always working on it. And so what was the case with this record that you wanted to take more time to kind of write and get this one out?
Well, a few things happened. First, we cut the cooperation with our former manager in 2014, I think, early 2014 it was. And with that went some of our plans that we had. So we sort of stopped for a while there, for about a year or a year and a half. And that took some time out of our schedule. And then secondly, for every album since Ragnarok, we'd been sort of on a treadmill, touring studio every other year.
Yeah.
And especially the recording sessions got to be extremely stressful for me. Not so bad in the beginning, I felt I could handle it, but towards the end, the Vasher especially and the Lay of Trim, I was so stressed that I thought, if I don't stop this, I'm going to die from this soon. So I decided, for my part at least, to change the studio process and the songwriting process radically, and just take the time that it needs to take, and specifically record on our own terms, at home in our home studios. Mm-hmm. But that requires some technical skills that we did not have when we started, and we have to sort of reinvent some things, closely advised by Jacob Hansen, the guy whose studio we go to for mixing and mastering and for recording drums. So that also took a lot of time, building up that expertise of recording. But now we have it, and I hope it means it won't be as long until the next album.
Well, it's got to be nice that technology has advanced so much from when you first started as a band to now, that you have that opportunity to be able to just kind of do things on your own and then piece everything together between the members when it prohibits you guys.
Exactly. Like when we started, that was unthinkable. But now you have a laptop, a Mac, and two small devices. They're expensive, but they don't take much space, and you have enough to record guitar and bass and in international quality. And I bought a very expensive vocal microphone, and then the vocals are a little bit more demanding. You'll need a soundproof and a dead room, but there's nothing impossible about it. Like, you just need to do a bit of work around the house to insulate it sound wise, and that's what I did. So I recorded the choirs and vocals at home, and I don't think you can hear it. On the album it sounds fully professional. Mm-hmm. and it was expensive and it took time, but it was very relaxing.
That's good. And I think too, it's really important you thinking about your health in that way too, because if you're burning the candle at both ends, it's just not conducive to not only being creative, but I mean, the rest of the band members too are probably going to feel some fallout from that. And, you don't need that kind of tension, I would assume, in the band. Like, it's important to worry about like your health and the band and all these other things as opposed to just getting a record out.
Yes, especially, as you get older, you realize you're not 17 anymore.
Yeah.
And things like that become increasingly important. You have some, get in your 40s and close to your 50s, and you see some people your own age that really don't have it anymore, and you're more and more grateful for the health that you do have.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. I mean, it's interesting to me too, because there are people that have like sacrificed their health over, the music, and it's kind of not worked out for them. And it's always a shame to see and hear that when like somebody gets sick or passes away and they, never got to finish something, or, whatever the case may be with stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Right now, I'm just praying for the health of the guy, Martin, George R.R. Martin.
Oh, yeah.
That he makes it to finish his books. That's not like Tolkien.
I think he'll get there. It's just going to take it. I think, what's funny with that is I think he's under so much pressure from like the fan base, and then, worrying about like the TV show, that it's probably got to be extremely distracting to him to want to like sit there and focus on it. That's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
How popular.
Another thing is there's no deadline that can scare him, because he's so rich now. Like,
True.
If money can't is not inspiring in itself, but being fear of a deadline, that can really motivate you, because they're not going to pay you unless you deliver. But how are you going to scare a guy like that with such threats? So the motivation really has to come from within, and I can imagine it's difficult.
Yeah. So I guess kind of another thing I wanted to ask about here, you're really, I guess, let's see, how should I word this? I think it seems like to you, in the band and, all the themes of it, it's really important that you have the Faroese like heritage in a lot of your songs. What keeps you wanting to add all that into like the lyrics and themes of the songs and the band, because it's very unique. You don't see many people, and you guys are like the only band from that area, so you kind of have it locked down.
Well, it's sort of what I started out doing on the first album. It was my ambition. Like I said, I was very interested in mythology and history from I was 10 years old, and then when I was 14 came heavy metal and guitar and music theory. And when I was then we made another band when I was 17, and but then in my early 20s we made this band, and I sort of just used the things that I love, heavy metal, history, and necessarily Faroese history and Faroese folk music first and foremost, but
Mm-hmm.
but in also just Nordic history and Nordic musical tradition in general. And those were the things that I liked, and those were the things I used for the music. And we're the only ones from the Faroes, but there are bands from other Nordic countries. I suppose we do sort of the same thing as some of them in some way. So I don't necessarily feel like it's that unique what we do. And it's still what inspires me. I still have a great interest in Nordic folk music, and I listen to some folk bands and folk music every now and then, and deeply inspiring and moving and uplifting. And it's for the foreseeable future, it's what I will continue to use for our music.
Yeah, I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it's cool that you would want to keep using it, and it's part of your life and your heritage. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I find it really fascinating myself.
Cool. Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to kind of compliment you on here is I really like, I don't know if these are all your choices, but the cover songs that you've put on the past few albums, you've picked a pretty good selection of songs, and you've done them all with just incredible justice to the original. I think that the way you've covered those songs are incredible.
Thanks. We decided to do this before Left Trim, and we simply picked the favorite track ever of each band member at that point. I remember precisely when we decided to do this. We were driving through Germany in a van between concerts, and I was driving myself actually, and I just, out of sheer boredom, asked my band members, "What's your favorite song ever?" And you have to pick one, like at gun. And those were the 4 songs we came up with. Mine was Black Sabbath, I from Dehumanizer, and Kyrre Streme, who was the drummer at the time, said Stargazer by is Deep Purple.
Nice.
No, it's Rainbow, I think.
Right.
And Terje, the guitar player, Cemetery Gates by Pantera, and Gunnar, the bassist, Where Eagles Dare, Iron Maiden, and 2 songs on the Lay of Trim, and the next 2 songs as bonus tracks for Valkyria, and that's how those came about.
Yeah, I think out of all those, I think the Black Sabbath and Pantera songs are my favorite. That Pantera one, man, that's probably one of the best covers I've heard of that song. It's really good.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I know, talking about cover songs isn't that fun, because it's not your work, but I think that when bands kind of try to do their own unique take on them, it adds like a new layer to them, and you can either like do it really good or you can do it really bad. There's not really an in-between with cover songs, and I think all the ones that you did were all really good, so that's a rarity in my opinion.
Thanks.
So let's talk about the new record, because that's what we're here for. I know there was like a little bit of member changes in between, and so you're working with Attila now on this record. Is that correct?
No, actually, Terje quit after we'd recorded the album.
Okay.
So Terje is on the album. He recorded all his guitar and solos. And
so with the writing of this album, was it still mainly you doing everything, or did he have any like input, or how did you come about writing this record, since you took such a long time to kind of get it all together?
Very in the process, we sat down and we picked the theme for the album, Hell, and we sort of all 3 of us, Gunnar, Terje, and I, sort of pitched in our ideas and picked the best ones to work on for this album. And Terje had 6 songs, I had 6, Gunnar had 2, but for time restricted reasons, we only got 5 of Terje's ideas, and one of them went to the it's going to be on the next album again, because there simply wasn't room for it on this one. And so Terje provided 5 songs, and recorded all his guitar and solos himself. And we mostly Gunnar and I worked on arranging the songs together, producing them from basic ideas into full-fledged songs. And I wrote the lyrics all by myself. And yeah, we took our time with it, especially the arrangement part, Gunnar and I, and we went through all the details that we didn't have time to go through on the other albums.
Yeah.
Like when you rush it that much in the studio, there's always something you could have done better. It's not as bad as nobody tells you precisely where you could have done anything better, but you can hear it yourself. That if I had more time, if I could rest like before I recorded these vocals, it would have been that better. If I had some time to work more on the solo, I could have had a better one. And all that we had time for on this one, and that includes Terje and Gunnar.
So did you have everything like done by the time you were ready to record? Like, did you do all this pre-production work, or were you still kind of refining things once you were in the studio?
No, all the melodies, all the song structures, most of the solos were done before we started recording.
Nice.
But then the one thing that I tend to come up with in studio is the solos. You know, you have all the music, and unless you have a specific melody you want to play, it's like you were. And then I've arranged that before, but most solos, I sort of just I record the guitar, drums, bass is all recorded, and I sit down and say, okay, now time to make a solo over this. What can I do? What's fitting? And then I sort of just doodle away and you know, write it down on notes and arrange it
Oh, that's
as,
really
as I
cool.
come up with it, and then yeah. But then sometimes, you know, I over arrange it, and I sort of have to practice for a week or two before I can even play it. That happened especially with the solo for the second song on this album, All Heroes Fall. It's a very, very fast, sweet part in my solo, and when I played it, you know, a bit under tempo, and I thought, wow, this pattern is cool, and I guess I could play this a bit faster, but then need to get it up to the tempo of the song, and it turned out to be quite demanding. So. That's how it often happens in when I make the solos. Like I sit and nerd around with the details, and until I sort of compose myself into a technical corner, and I have to practice for a day or a week.
Well, I have to admit, I love that level of spontaneity there, where like you kind of don't have it planned out, and then you put it or arrange it in context of the rest of the song, and then there it is. It's a really cool way to write.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
Well, you can do it with the solos because nothing depends on the solos, and solos depend on everything else. Like it's not like the music is written around the solos; it's the other way around. So if it were, you know, the rhythm guitar, you know, and you would sort of come up with that on the spot, it wouldn't work because it needs to be properly composed together with the bass and the drums, and or also the vocals if there are vocals over that part. But the solos are sort of, you know, on top of everything. So you're sort of free to come up with whatever you think is gonna work, and it's quite fun to do.
Now, when you were in the studio, did you record kind of? I guess the main thing I hear often is like recording everything separately, or did you kind of go for that live sound where you guys kind of play it all together?
No, it's all recorded separately.
Okay.
We've never done any simultaneous recording. I think since maybe on the first album we may have recorded drums and bass at the same time. No, we always recorded separately, and if the music is arranged in advance, it is the way to go. If it's not that arranged, then it sort of depends on the musicians playing properly together and sort of coming up with it on the spot. That's not this kind of music. I don't think any bands in our style do that.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. It is very dependent on like the genre and style, and depending on what sound you're going for. I would, especially with this music being so technical, having that ability to just play your parts and then put them all together makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That's what bands do in this. Well, I guess Iron Maiden nowadays plays everything sort of more live, all at the same time, and you can hear it. You know, it doesn't sound very technical. It sounds quite what do you call it, jammy or
that makes sense.
Yeah, not really the kind of sound that I like. Not for this kind of music, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. So how much time did you take in the studio? Was it pretty quick? Like, were you on a crunch, or did you have a lot more time this time around to kind of get everything done?
Well, you know, no, like I said, we recorded in our own home studio.
Oh, okay.
And it was Terry has his little studio. I had mine, and Terry recorded his guitars at his place. I recorded my guitars, vocals, and the bass and the choirs in my studio. And you know, it took us months, maybe a year. I don't know when we started, but you know, months at least. You know, actually, we may have, you know, started recording before we finished all the songs and sort of recorded it sort of off and on here and there.
I have to
in
think
between
that's
writing.
Probably sorry, go ahead.
No, you ask.
I was going to say I would have to think that's probably a lot more of a conducive work environment too, to know that you can just kind of take your time and get everything piece by piece as opposed to rushing everything out there.
Exactly. The process was quite relaxed, and the writing process as well. But you know, you do feel the pressure because for financial reasons.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's entirely it's not like yeah, well,
So, what kind of gear did you use? This is like my favorite thing to ask. I really like hearing about like guitars and amps and stuff like that. What all did you use for your setup as far as your end of it?
Jacob Hansen, the studio we use for mixing, he does reamping. So we record a dry signal that he reamps and runs through his amps, and it's as if we were standing there playing through it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a pre-recorded signal that he uses. When I record, I have a plug-in in my laptop. I don't even own an amp
Oh wow.
of any kind. I record on my Mac through the Logic Pro X program, and I have a plug-in from BiSFX that I use. Has a very realistic sound, but it's only a plug-in. Like I turn it off, and it's just a clean signal. I send that signal to Jacob, and Jacob runs it through his amps. And so far as I know, he uses Mesa and PV 5150, and maybe some Marshall as well. So yeah, the guitar sound on the album is his his doing, and we sort of copy that with in digital form for live shows. When we play live, we have Kemper amps. They're digital. The reason we use digital is that it's too demanding to travel with amp heads.
Yeah.
And for traveling bands nowadays, digital is the only way. It's reliable, it sounds decent, and if you have tube amps, tubes are sort of temperamental. They don't always sound the same just from turning the amp off and on again.
Mm-hmm.
So you get sort of a slightly different sound each time, and it's also very sensitive to traveling. And these amps from Kemper, they're really hardy and durable. And so I'm sorry to disappoint you there, man. I don't even own an amp.
Oh no, that's actually really interesting because I still know a lot of bands that like use amps and record that way. So I've very rarely heard someone adopting like technology like this. So I guess early, maybe, I don't know. Maybe it's more prevalent than I realized, but that's actually really cool. I wasn't aware that you could just write a clean channel on your guitar, on your computer and send it off, and then bam, that's all you need.
Yeah. Like you, of course, you record the clean signal, and the you hear like a what do you call it, a simulated amp sound,
Yeah.
But you can turn that off again, and you still have all of the clean signal. Yeah, this is quite common, and it sounds as if you were in studio playing, only you don't have to go there.
Huh. That's crazy. Yeah, because I have Logic too, and I mess around with it a little bit, but I had no idea that you could actually like tweak guitar sounds in it. That's pretty interesting. I have to mess around with that by myself. So with the new album, I mean, what kind of themes were you wanting to approach with like the lyrics and the overall like aesthetic of it?
Like I told you, very early in the process, we chose the theme for the album, and it was Hel, the underworld in Norse mythology, where those who die an dishonorable death go, those who die not in battle. And it's a very dark, hopeless, and misty, boring place, not like hell from the Bible. And Hel is also the name of the goddess who guards over this realm. She's the daughter of Loki, and she's supposedly a horrible creature to look upon. And that is, well, that's not. It's not a concept album. That's sort of the theme or the atmosphere for the lyrical side of the album. And lyrics are written sort of in this universe and in this atmosphere, but not necessarily with a storyline. Some of the songs are directly referring to things from mythology, and others are not. But generally, they're very dark and hopeless, and describe hopeless situations, and that's the theme and the expression we went for. So maybe in a lyrical sense, this is the like an opposite of the previous album.
So you took like a more of a not directional shift, but just like darker in tone with like the lyrics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's much more gloomy, and but it also fits with the music. Music is harder, heavier, and more extreme, and
Yeah.
and also more darker.
Yeah, I have to agree. I've only listened to the record a couple times so far, but going back and like revisiting other ones, I was like, man, this sounds a lot different as far as like the tone and like feeling of it when you really listen to everything put together. Yeah, really, really cool like vibe from it.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I guess kind of one last thing here, putting all the work into this record. I mean, what's the one thing that you're the most proud of with it? I know this far into a career with a band, you might lose sight of always feeling good about your music maybe, or like being proud of it because it's just normal for you. But what was something that you're the most proud of with it?
This album, well, this is really hard to decide.
Mm-hmm.
I think most proud of having recorded most of it myself. Done the technical work as well as the creative work. So that is one point of pride, and secondly, I did some extreme vocals on this album. I've never done that before. First
nice.
time I tried was when I recorded the first track for this one studio, and I like the way my vocals turn out. Much harsher than they used to be, and I sort of from playing so much live, I sort of got control of that. Turning on the harshness of my sound without ruining my voice, and I feel I have that, pretty much under control, and I'm satisfied with the way I did it on this album.
Good. Yeah, I think it's important to always be pushing yourself, musically and personally and creatively. And I think that it sounds like to me that you've done that and accomplished that. So that's really awesome to hear.
Yes. I think right, yes.
So the record comes out March 1st or the 8th, I forget. Or is it later?
8th of March.
8th. Okay.
No, 8th of March, yeah.
Awesome. And it's out on Metal Blade. It is called Hell. I can't say it properly the way you do.
Well, it's Hell, but never mind. I guess English speaking people will call it Hell.
Yeah.
And it'll be on Metal Blade, yes.
Awesome.
And
yeah.
there are CDs, LPs, and merch also to be purchased from Metal Blade, and you can pre-order it already on metalblade.com/tier.
Yeah, I'll make sure when I put this out, I link to everything so that way people can find it. And you guys have is it a lyric video up right now, I think? Or is it an actual music video?
Yeah. No, it's a lyrical video.
Okay.
Music videos are coming in February.
Nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time in doing this, man. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for doing this. It was a nice and different, relaxing interview.
Yeah, I like to try and make it just as casual a conversation as possible. Sometimes you got to ask questions, and
that's that's excellent.
Yeah.
Good on you for that, man.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. I mean, like I said, I know you've been doing this all day, and it's hard, but I really do appreciate
exactly.
your time. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, thank you for doing this, man, and hope to see you around.
Be excellent to each other. And